How do you describe your work for those that aren't familiar with it?
It's kind of weird. It's kind of, at the moment, it's sort of changed a lot over the last, sort of 20 years that I've been making digital art. At the moment, it's pretty weird and sort of, some of it is not super suitable for work. But it's got, sort of looking at a lot of sort of pop culture references, political references, and sort of trying to dissect, sort of what's happening, at the moment through a very sort of sci-fi kind of weird filter, internet filter.
And where do you get your inspiration from on a daily basis? Are there some days that are more creative than others?
Absolutely. So this is, again, I've created a picture every day for the last over 14 years. Of course, not every day I'm like, whoa, I'm so inspired today. There's, days where it's like, oh, I'm going to the freaking GQ Awards, I just get this thing done, And so it's about sitting down every day and sort of not waiting to just be inspired and just sort of sitting down and working every day. And that's something I believe sort of is something that can help a lot of people get over that fear of the sort of blank canvas of sort of starting a project, just sitting down and committing to putting out something every day. And it's not going to be a masterpiece, but you put out something every day, and it's going to, eventually those tiny breadcrumbs could lead to this. And so that's really what kind of this story is about.
Tell us about non-fungible tokens and how they've disrupted the art market.
So non-fungible tokens are basically sort of, for people not familiar with them, they're basically sort of certificates of ownership on the blockchain in terms of, and they can be sort of tied to digital art, they can be tied to pretty much anything. They could be tied to gaming assets. In the future, I believe they'll be tied to cars and houses and diplomas and all different things. But in terms of digital art, it's a way to own digital art in a way that just was not possible before. I had, before this, millions of fans, but they had no way to truly collect my art. Now they do with NFTs, and so I think you're really going to see this as the next chapter of art history, very similar to graffiti. That was, very much seen as something that was not a, true art form. And so I think that's what you're going to see with digital art, people sort of appreciating it in a different manner, because it's something that's already sort of ubiquitous. It's around us in all of the TV, all of the websites, all of the films that we see. And so I think being able to collect it is a real game changer.
Well, you sold one of your works for $69 million. Was that a shock to you, people?
It definitely was a shock, but people were saying that was going to happen beforehand. So it wasn't totally a shock. I mean, it's one of those things where it's very hard for you to be like, oh yeah, I think it'll probably go for $70 million. Who would think that? You're not going to think that. But so it was definitely a shock on one hand, but on the other hand, it's sort of this space is crazy. The crypto space is definitely crazy. So crazy things could happen, and crazy things did happen, I guess.
What do you say to those critics who don't quite understand the NFTs and their value?
I think it's one of those things where NFTs don't inherently have value, just like a website doesn't inherently have value. So I think it's one of those things where people do need to be somewhat cautious in terms of sort of the market and sort of making sure what they're buying is something that's going to be around and something that people are going to care about and value 10, 20 years from now, just like any other art, just like any other stock or any other asset that you would buy. So I think this is an asset class that doesn't just magically create value, but it's something that if you are choosing projects that have a emotional connection or some utility to them, they will retain value over the long term. And so I think it's something that people should be aware of, but also go in making sure they're doing their research beforehand.
And what's next for you?
So just honestly creating, more digital art. This is, the Everydays is a project that I'll be doing the rest of my life. It's something that, is very much ongoing. And so I think this is just really the absolute beginning of this sort of movement. I think it's really exciting to be at the beginning and be able to sort of feel like we're writing the rules to how these things work and sort of what has value and what is, how these things can be a part of people's lives, and that's just super exciting and inspiring to me.